here to transport you to the magical world of Broadway in 1990. Who is excited? So we have an incredible, illustrious panel with us today of actors who you have seen in shows. I have loved them since I was a wee theater nerd. They've been in a million things. You should IMDb and Google them all later, but I'm going to introduce them right now as though we're in 1990. So, from City of Angels, Greg Edelman! Change in the air, we have Mary Stout. From Grand Hotel, Bob Stillman. Welcome to the stage, Cats' J. Aubrey Jones. Thank you so much. And from the final cast of A Chorus Line, Doug Friedman. So my first question, it is 1990. You were on Broadway. Tell us about the show you're in, your role, and how you got to be there, starting with Greg.
Oh, okay. Is this on? The show was City of Angels. And a school group, I suppose. And what was the other part? What did I play?
Who did you play and how did you get to be in the show?
I played an author named Stein, and I co-starred opposite Jim Nobbin, who won the Tony, and I got to be in the show. It was one of those things, there was a lovely casting directing office in those days, Johnson Lift. Yes. That no longer exists anymore, but anyway, they were like, you know how casting offices sometimes, they sort of like, you know, take a shine to you, and they were very supportive of me, and out of nowhere, I got a call to interview. There was no audition at the beginning. I interviewed with Michael Blakemore for a show called Double Exposure. That's what it was called in those days. And I went into it was like kind of like a therapist's office. And I sat down with Michael Blakemore, and he just had a chat with me for a while. And hello, yes, nice to meet you. And I've heard an awful lot about you. Well, thank you so much. And that was that section of the interview. And then about a week later, not even, a few days later, I was asked to meet with Cy Coleman at his old office. He had this fabulous office that looked like something out of a film noir detective movie. And I went in, I actually was sitting in the, it's funny, when I walked into the office, I know you'll get a chance to talk. But it's an amazing story because I went into Cy's old office on like 54th Street, and what was her name? Oh God, I'm forgetting her name. But anyway, when I walked in the office, there was a lady, a lovely lady, which I'm old, I forgot her name, but she was blonde and she was behind the desk, and she said, "Hey, voice, how you doing? Sit down, Cy will be with you in a second." I swear to God, he was like right out of City of Angels. And so I sat there, and in the next room was Cy playing, and Randy Graff was singing in the next room. And I went in to sing with the Cy, and Cy did this improv thing with me. And he totally said, "Hey, just try this." You know, he's a cool cat. He was a great guy. And then I had a final call back where we were on the stage of the Virginia Theater in Virginia in those days. And what's it called now?
The August Wilson.
Well, thank you, the August Wilson. Thank you, I remember. And it was one of those old-fashioned auditions. You're on a big Broadway stage. And there was a bridge over the pit, a little wooden bridge. And I walked out on stage. And Cy ran up across the bridge, and he came up to me, and he said something quickly. He just came up to me and he said, "Give them hell." And I sang like I could never sing, in my life, and I was lucky to get the part. I got the part. So there you go. Thank you. Thank you.
Everybody go listen to your City of Angels cast recording later. You'll understand why. You'll understand it all.
Well, I really feel like Grandma because before the August Wilson was named to the Virginia, it was called the Anta. And I made my Broadway debut at the Anta.
Okay. And that's named after a disease of some kind.
My name is Mary Stout, and in 1990, I did A Change in the Air. Now, it's one of the more obscure choices today. I'm very impressed, Jennifer. It ran for a heartbeat, We had 4 weeks of preview, and we ran it 2 weeks. Yeah, well, it was a week, and then they decided that they'd try to get it together because you needed to run things long enough so that the rights could be, I don't know. But anyway, so we ran 2 weeks. And it was, I played Lady Enid. And I had those donuts on my ears, you know, it was based loosely, from what I understand, on a Mark Twain story about 3 cousins who, the king was dying. We never see him. The king was dying, and he had there were 3 cousins vying for, you know, he had no heir. And the one cousin that Brooks played was sort of she was kind of the ball buster. You know, she was in charge, and she wanted that job. She wanted to be the leader, the emperor. And the other 2 were obviously of childbearing age, who knew? And so we each had a child. And my husband convinced me that our son was...
This isn't the play, right?
This isn't the play. My husband, the Academy Award winner, J.K. Simmons. Yes. And he said to me, so his character said if we didn't shield this boy, because he had to stay chaste to the age of 21 before he could be the king. So, and then the other cousin, unbeknownst to us, had a girl, and she decided that her daughter needed to be raised as a boy. So the big event happens when they all come to the castle. And I have a very tall, thin boy dressed as a girl, and there's this little perky Judy Blazer character who was dressed as a boy, Prince Conrad. So anyway, and then of course, you know what happens. They fell in love. Anyway, it was fun, and I played Lady Enid for 6 weeks at the Edison Theater. If everybody knows where the Supper Club is, you know, it was origin of Calcutta ran there for years.
I'm going to ask you more about the Edison later. Okay. Don't you worry.
Anyway, that's my story. So that's it.
Should I tell the story I told
Please
you?
tell it.
Okay, so this starts, so Grand Hotel was my official Broadway debut, but actually my thwarted Broadway debut was in Legs Diamond, in Peter Allen's Legs Diamond. I was his kid brother, Eddie, and we had workshopped it. I had this great ballad, I had the song and dance number with Peter. It was fabulous. It was a love triangle between me and Peter and Christine Andreas. And then cut to like a year later, and now we're going to Broadway. And my ballad has been cut, but that's cool because I still have the love triangle and I still have the song and dance number with Peter where we decided to go into crime together. And then they wrote Christine Andreas out after 2 weeks of previews. I think they did it quickly because in order to avoid having to pay the run of the contract, right? So she was gone, but I still had my going into crime with Peter Allen moment, and it was still cool and everything. And then they started like shrinking my apartment, building it back up, and then shrinking it, building it back up, and then finally we were supposed to open on December 1st. They had pushed the opening back to December 20-something. December 2nd, you shall remember, is my birthday. So we were originally going to open on the eve of my birthday, and I was going to open the New York Times and see myself as a Broadway, whatever, you know, a new star. And what happened was on December 1st, the night we were supposed to open, the eve of my birthday, they told me I was being written out. And so, yes, exactly. That was my reaction to it. So anyway, but I had a run of the play contract, so that was cool. So I ended up I just sat home and collected checks until the play closed in February. And they invited me to sing the ballad that had been written out, which was a gorgeous song, at the closing night party, which I went to, and I sang with a mission. I was just, literally, as you do. I said, okay, watch this, And I sang it well. And Joey Parnes, who is the general manager of Grand Hotel, came up to me afterwards and had been working on Legs Time and said, hey, that was great. Have you auditioned for the Baron in Grand Hotel? And I said, no, I've been trying to get an audition, but I can't get in. He said, I'll get you in. So the next thing I knew, I had to call for my agent, and I went into audition for the Baron, and that's not my jam. Really, that was what they got David Carroll to do that. But Tommy loved the thing that I did do, and he kind of shaped that part. He literally, the quote that I heard was, well, I just have to use him. And so that was, they sort of created a space for me.
Well, hi, my name is J. Aubrey Jones, and in 1990 I was in Cats. I was the understudy to Old Deuteronomy, and I made my debut in 1986, and Greg Edelman was in the show as Gus Growltiger when I joined the company. I was one of the 4 booth singers, because they have understudies sing in the singer's booth. And shall I tell them? Okay. Well, I was understudying one of the healthiest actors ever. And I had gone into the show June 16th and had never gone on, but had faithfully attended understudy rehearsals like you do. And then Monday evening, December 1st, 1986.
December 1st! That's crazy!
What happened to you on December?
Picture it. I'm in the theater backstage, and then Clint Bowers, who was the actor who was playing Deuteronomy, his dresser came to me and said, he's not here yet. You may be going on tonight. He had a death in his family in California, and he was flying in an attempt to get back to the Winter Garden Theater in time. It was the night they were lighting the Christmas tree in Rockefeller Center, and the airplane was circling the airport. They make the half-hour call, no Clint. They make the 15-minute call, no Clint. If it is possible for one's life to change in a moment, then my moment struck at 7:48. Our stage manager went on the backstage public address system and said, ladies and gentlemen, we have another cast change to announce. Clint Bowers is out, J. Aubrey Jones is on as Old Deuteronomy. I was so excited, I broke into a maddening calm, as Wendy Hiller might have said, gathered all my gear, went down to his dressing room, put on my face, put on the wig, put on the costume. So excited, but I forgot to powder my makeup and seal it. So I finished I finished Jellicle Songs for Jellicle Cats, thank you. And I get back to the dressing room to change into Deuteronomy, and then to find to my horror that my face had melted off. So I quickly did a reapply, made sure I powdered, made sure I put the spritz on, and that was my Broadway debut.
You sang your face off.
And danced my face off too. Jellicle Songs is the only time that Deuteronomy really gets to dance, and my fellow booth members who could see the stage on a closed circuit television would refer to it as Jay's nightclub act.
Don't you guys feel like it's 1990? Like, don't you feel like you're there right now? Because I definitely do. Doug, take it away.
I'm Doug Friedman, and I played Gregory Gardner in the final company, well, the final before the revival. And this is weird, because chorus line was the reason I got into show business. I was 13, I went with my 7th grade chorus class from Long Island, and we came into the city. Thank you very much. And we saw chorus line from the last row of the balcony of the Schubert. And I'd done plays and musicals and stuff, but I never really thought that there was like a career. I didn't think that that was, it was just the thing you did. And I saw Chorus Line. We'd been listening to the album in the car with my parents, and I saw the show and that was it. I decided at that moment that I was going to be a dancer in a chorus line on Broadway. Now, I'd never danced. I had really just, I still have no idea why I decided that that was what it was going to be, and my parents were not thrilled. So anyway, fast forward, I started coming to the city, taking dance classes when I was 16, and the dance captain of, or the main dance captain of Chorus Line used to come to the dance class I went to and saw me in class and thought I looked right. And so I think I was probably about 17 by then, and brought me into my first open call. And I went, and I wasn't ready, and the music would start, and I just kind of would go like, I just went into my little dream world that you have in your bedroom that you shouldn't do on a Broadway stage. And so I did that for a few years and humiliated myself. And fast forward, I ended up in the European tour of Chorus Line in '86. There were a lot of '86 happening. And then in '89, I did another European tour of Chorus Line and came home from it. And at that point, they were looking, the Gregory Gardner decided to leave. And at that time, people weren't, they pretty much, it was like a closed shop. Like people would just come in from various companies, but they were looking and they had an open call, and Mitzi Hamilton, who had played our Sheila, had called stage manager and said, you should see this guy. But it was, everybody who was anybody for one role. And went in, did all the things, and at the end of the day, it was just me and a couple of other people, and they called me that night, and they said, you're coming in 2 days. Came in, a couple more people went in, I did all my things, and I sang, I danced, they had me do the name and whatever, and then they said, so, do you want the job? And I thought, yes! And so they said, so what do you want to do? And I said, I gotta call my mom! So I ran out from the stage and I bumped into Paula Leggett, Chase, who I had done cabaret with on the road, and I saw her and I said, guess who's in the show? And she said, who? And I said, me! And she said, do you want to run out in the alley and scream? And I said, yes! And so the two of us jumped up and down and Schubert out.
It felt like a monologue from a chorus line. That was incredible. So tell us more about the theater that you were working in itself. Who did you share a dressing room with? Is there anything about the Winter Garden during Cats or the Edison during Changing the Air that someone might not know unless they worked there? Was there any secret corner you hung out in of the, I'm sure huge and spacious theaters? Tell us about that.
Well, for me, it was just so wonderful to be in the Winter Garden, because I had first heard of the Winter Garden when I was, are you ready for this, 8 years old, and I had bought the original cast album of West Side Story, and I was just hooked. I was even younger than that. I was mad for Broadway. I had already seen Pacific Overtures at the Winter Garden, and James Earl Jones and Christopher Plummer in Othello, and you get on that stage and you think, my God, this is where Streisand did Funny Girl. This is where West Side Story was. Follies. Let's see, the singer's booth. Sometimes I would just go up there because I needed to just clear my head. And during performances, we had taken it upon ourselves to play Scrabble. And as a result, I joined the National Scrabble Association.
I wouldn't brag about that, but at least not on a date.
No, but because of my membership in the National Scrabble Association, I found out some really terrific words you can use. Kiviot. It's one of those weird words that has a Q that doesn't need a U directly after it. Q-I-V-I-U-T. It's a noun that can be made plural by adding an S. And it's the wool of a musk ox.
Cass is the gift that keeps giving. We all know this. Cass just keeps giving us more.
You know, can I just pick up on that because I believe someone is out here in the audience, Paul Harmon today. Paul? Okay, buddy. So anyway,
My brother-in-law.
So anyway, I did, this is picking up on the games backstage. I started out of college, the first show I did out of college was Evita, the Chicago company, national tour number 2. And a buddy of mine, we sat next to each other, because we knew each other from a stock show we had done. And we sat next to each other, Ken Land, you know? And he's very old now. And, but anyways, we started playing Big Boggle next to each other. And we got about like a few games in, and we really liked it. We were very competitive. Yeah, that was hard to believe. Anyway, so we were going. It was like 400 points in. And one of us turns to the other one and said, hey, what if we like play to like, I don't know, 15,000 points? And the other one, I don't recall who's who anymore, because that's my age. And I was like, that's a good idea. So, and literally, we would go and we would be like, there would be times when one of us would be hundreds of points ahead, then the other one would be hundreds. This is like over months. We were playing in Chicago for 11 months in the old days when shows played a long time on the road. And we finally tied at 14,499. And we were like, well, we gotta stop. You know, and we did. So anyway, I'm sorry, that's my big
This is my favorite tangent of any BroadwayCon panel, and then I just have to ask a tangential question, we'll get back, but was anyone part of the longest running poker game on Broadway underneath with Grease and...
No, but that you said that when I got into Chorus Line, I didn't realize that there was the longest running card game. The orchestra would, during the breaks, go and, I guess this was a card game that had started from the beginning and been running for 15 years. And basically they always would kind of, any break, they ran out, they played cards, ran back in. Like this is
Nick Wyman in that game? Was Nick Wyman in that game?
I believe he was in the Grease game.
Yeah, he's in any poker game. Nick Wyman.
We're talking about poker games on Broadway in the 70s and card games in the 80s. This is just amazing. I'm obsessed. What else about the theaters? Tell us about,
I need to back hand to pick up on all of read these threads together. Okay, so Grand Hotel, our game, well, we had many games. And the reason we had many games was really my dressing room mate. Did anybody know Rex Hayes here?
Yes.
Rex Hayes played the original concierge. He played my boss in Grand Hotel. The funniest, most twisted sense of humor you have ever been around. And he would, like, I'd walk into the dressing room every day and he'd say, Stillman, we need a new game. Let's come up with names for gay airlines. And we came up with some great ones, but I'm not going to repeat them. Anyway, okay, so this is no. See, you see me, private message. Anyway, so he was constantly coming up with stuff, but the thing that ran the longest was Botticelli.
Oh yeah.
We had games going of Botticelli that we would like start them off stage, and then do people know Grand Hotel here? Yeah. Okay. So in the Yellow Pavilion, right before How Could I Dance With You, that thing where Flunchin is seducing the Baron and all that stuff. So we all come in and we're doing this sort of Berlin version of a cha-cha, just dunk, 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 and snakes around in this very, very small enclosed space. And we'd be going, like, the first part we get to here, and the back part was like here, and this person would say to the person who was snaking back and behind, past him like this, and go, are you an Italian painter? And then, no, I'm not Raphael. And then it would just endless games of Botticelli. And then Rex, see, we would sit on the banquettes, and we very quickly learned that we could say whatever we wanted to each other and look like we were conversing. We were urged to act like we were commenting on the action. So was always sitting next to Rex, and Rex would lean over and say something absolutely outrageous. We were playing this game, come up with your Native American name, right? And because the movie Dances with Wolves had just come out. And George Dudley, who was 6'6", shared a dressing room with all of the bellhops, who were all required to be very diminutive. And so, somebody said, said, Dudley is dresses with dwarves. And people on the other side of the stage would go, okay, what happened now? I mean, this is I hate to say this, but this is the kind of what goes on sometimes. Anyway, so this was the Martin Beck, which is now the, I believe it's not butter or something, or the Hirschfeld, yeah, and the other great thing I want to tell you about that, the theater was at Alice Gilbert. Oh, I love Alice Gilbert. Do we know Alice Gilbert?
Tell us more.
Wardrobe mistress. Alice Gilbert. This was my first Broadway show, and I gotta tell you, anybody who knows me knows I love to eat. And I had a fair amount of time off stage. And Alice Gilbert would just set this banquet in the wardrobe room. There was cake, and there were cookies, and people would bake, and people would bring stuff in, and it was and the idea of not needing a costume was alien to me until I got to it. And the day Alice left and somebody else came in, all of a sudden there was a couple of carrot sticks and some celery, and I went, it's well, that era is over. Anyway, so those were my memories of the Martin Beck.
Well, we were at the lovely Edison Theater on West 46th Street, was the home of O Calcutta for many years. And it was, I think we were the last thing before the supper club came in, I think.
I believe that's true, yeah.
Oh, there may have been something else there.
It was definitely, it was the last
Jewish thing.
year.
Jewish thing.
Those were the days? Those were the days.
I'm
glad I remembered that.
That's it. Those were the days.
But Mary Karen, it's so cool. I mean, the Edison is no longer a Broadway theater, so you can tell us about it for those of us who couldn't go there.
It was so great because, I mean, you could just, there were seats. I mean, there weren't tables at that time. It was a lovely, smallish, probably 700 seats, probably. So it was good size.
I was at your opening night.
You were?
I was, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Poker buddy JK.
That's right.
Why I was there. Yeah.
And anyway, and all the girls were in one dressing room and the boys were in the other. So it was pretty, there wasn't like private dressing rooms or anything back there. So, and I was telling Jennifer that one of the stories that I can always remember is that on our press night, which was the Thursday, I think we opened on a Sunday night, I think, and on Thursday night, we were beginning the show. It was like 8:05. We were doing our prologue to the show, which was musicalized, set the story up, and a fire alarm went off in the Edison. And that meant in the theater as well. It was doing one of these. And the stage managers who were a little nebbishy, maybe, a little, not really in charge, as it were, and they didn't stop the show. So I came on at one point and I said, "Isn't this lovely?" And the audience just laughed. I mean, it was like ridiculous. And finally it took Rose, who was the cousin in charge. And she finally stopped and said, "I think we should take a break." And we all left the stage, and you could just see everybody in the hallway going, "That's it. We're dead now." Anyway, that was it. There was that. And of course, every review talked about the fire alarm. But it was a very sweet place, and sort of very, I don't know, it felt a little like a space that had been turned into a theater versus a theater itself, you know. But it was a lovely place to be for a short period of time. That's all with the Edison.
At the Schubert, I was on the 3rd floor, and everybody, the boys, I guess, we were all in like group 2s, and I was with the Mark. And when I was there, they announced the closing of the show, and so when I started in the show, the audiences were not very large and mostly tourists, and so in fact on my opening night, Susan Danielle, who was playing Sheila, was like, "I'm so sorry, Dave," because it was just the audience was very like small and quiet, and I was like, "What are you talking about? I'm on Broadway. It doesn't matter." Anyway, once they announced the closing, it suddenly everything picked up again. We suddenly became kind of the thing, and so people were starting to pay homage to the show, which was really cool for me. So if you weren't going to be in the original, it was kind of nice to be in the closing. And so people came, and that was really cool. And I remember being on the 3rd floor, like nobody came to the 3rd floor. It's like, you know. But Robert Wagner came to the 3rd floor. So Robert Wagner and Jill St. John. And of course, you know, I'm a kid of the 60s, 70s, and I watched Heart to Heart. Anyway, he came up and, "Hello, I'm RJ." You know, like, wow, okay. And I just thought it was so classy. Like nobody came to the 3rd floor. So there it is. That's the story.
So for so many of us who love these shows and have heard the recordings or have read about them but didn't actually get to see them, can you tell us about a favorite part or a highlight of the show, either a favorite number you performed, something you didn't perform that you would watch from the wings of somebody else? I know it's hard to pick a favorite, so just a highlight of your show for you.
I'll tell a quick story. So there's finally everybody's been at the castle, right? And the two of them have sort of fallen in love with each other, although they haven't addressed that. That's what it is. The big tall boy who's dressed like a girl and the little cute girl who's dressed like a boy. A little awkward. Anyway, and the show, it was very light affair, if you get my drift. Without, you know, it had a few laughs. But not a whole lot. In fact, during rehearsals one day, we're sitting in the stage manager's office, and they come in with David Bell, the director, comes in with this stack of joke books.
Oh no.
Yeah, we knew we were in desperate.
That was the fire alarm.
Yes,
that was the real fire alarm.
But I'm not credited, but I did find, by accident, honest, I found one of the best laughs in the show. So at the big climax of the show is the coronation of the boy, of the girl who's dressed like a boy. Right. And the cousin says, "All right, everyone, it's time for the coronation. Go get ready." Well, we've worn one costume the whole show. We're not changing. And so as I left the stage, I had an ad-lib that said, I said to JK, I said, "I think I'll wear what I have on." And the audience laughed, and I went off, and he just about fell, and we were off stage. He said, I said, what was that? And he said, "Keep it." I think I'll wear what I have on. See, it gets it right.
I want that to be the official hashtag of BroadwayCon now. I'll wear what I have on. Let's make that catch on.
I'll wear what I have on.
Well, in my case, there were a couple of numbers that I loved. First of all, I loved Jellicle Songs for Jellicle Cats. Because it was a number where the entire cast was on stage, and it was sort of this communal, almost ritualistic number. And there I was giving you greater Martha Graham on the tire. And a few years into the run, and Paul, you're involved in this, I believe.
Not my fault.
Okay, I know. It's Act 2, the beginning of Act 2, and Deuteronomy is singing the moments of happiness. And I'm on at that performance. All of a sudden, without warning, Gus's arms start expanding at the wrong time. Was that you? It was you. Okay. Lonnie Ackerman. Hey. Lonnie Ackerman. Me and my memory. Lonnie Ackerman was on as Grisabella, and she hears this, and she is just cracking up. And for me, it's a terribly high song to sing because as a baritone, you've got to really pick it up there. So I'm really concentrating on singing this technically perfectly. And then the song ends and we go into Growl Tiger, and I go off stage and she corners me and says, "How in the world did you keep from laughing during all of this?" And I just said, "Well, I just figured he's old, it's flatulence, keep singing."
These are not the answers I expected.
I realized, I thought, do I tell this story or not? But, well, because my favorite part of the show was Lori Gamache played Cassie, and she was, and you know, kudos to all the, I loved many Cassies, but she was my favorite dancing Cassie. Don't tell anybody I said that, but yes, she was my favorite dancing Cassie. And so I would watch her in the wings always, and I didn't watch from the wings that much, and I watched her all the time. My story, during the Greg monologue, such as it is, you were doing it out to a light, and I finished, you get to this point where you talk about Sally Ketchum and feeling her boobs, and I said, and I suddenly thought to myself, no I don't. And nothing happened. And so the Zach had, I guess, not remembered to be there. And so, yeah, I'm not going to say who. And, one of the girls said, he's not there. And then Susan Danielle, once again, from her jersey, she said, so, that comes as a surprise to you, babe. That's my story.
All right, so as long as we find these kind of stories. So, no, I mean, these are the fun stories. So there was the moment when Michael Jeter was trying to register in Kringeline, was trying to register in Grand Hotel, and Rex Hayes, as the concierge, is denying him entrance. Michael Jeter would say, "Could it be that Grand Hotel does not take Jews?" And Rex would turn to him and say, "I assure you, even now, Baron Rothschild is upstairs in the Prince Albert suite." And Rex, early on in the run, this was a long run, and early on in the run, Rex confided in me, I think we were in Boston. He said, you know, I just know one of these days, I have it in my mind, it's gonna come out this way, I have it in my mind, instead of the Prince Albert suite, I keep almost saying the Prince Valiant suite. And sure enough, he chose to do this. This finally happened on John Schneider's first night on as the Baron. And so what happens is that the Baron hears this, and he jumps in and he says, "Excuse me, Baron Rothschild is an old friend of mine. Would it be helpful if I were to intercede for this gentleman on his behalf?" So Rex is out there, and he says, I assure you, even now, Baron Rothschild is upstairs in the Prince Valiant suite. And John Schneider goes, "Okay, I guess I have to roll with this." And he goes, "Excuse me, Prince Valiant is an old friend of my family." Which would have been, it would have been funny enough. It was hilarious. But then Eric Bohas, who was covering me, and just looks like, he looks like Prince Valiant. He went and he got the understudy wig for Karen Akers. Karen Akers' understudy wig, which is Prince Valiant. And he put it on, and he got her cape, the understudy's cape, put that on, and taped a cross to his chest, and stood there holding a sword in the wind, an imaginary sword in the wings. It was just
Well, City of Angels. We were all already, I know, we were all like, I was very funny. No, I actually wasn't. Anyway, I know, but we, the thing about being in that show was the orchestrator was this guy named Billy Byers, and he was this guy who was a real throwback to like the Nelson Riddle world, and so there was all these great charts with all these like amazing brass players, these trumpet players who would play all these high freaking notes. It was unbelievable. And they did it every night. And so I got to tell you, there was night after night where I would be singing like the opening number, and I'd be going, Scott, you know, and you'd be hearing these trumpets and the brass just blaring away, and be like, I can't believe I'm getting paid to like be on stage. This is like not a gig, you know, it's like totally fun. But the funny thing was, so we had, at the end of Act 1, there was a song that kind of was, I guess, a bit of a hit from the show called You're Nothing Without Me. And, thank you. And it was funny because when we got to stage that part of the show, we kind of like, Jim and I, we were like, so what do we do? That's my Jim impression. So what do we do? And I was like, well, I don't know. What do we kind of walk around each other and we'll kind of do this? And we kind of came up with dummy blocking. And that blocking ended up being blocking the number. And we would do the number, and even in rehearsal, people go, that's amazing. That's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And we would be like, what are we doing? But anyway, so Jim was a bit of a, and I'm not speaking out of school. If he were here, I'd say the same thing. He was a bit of a party guy, and he would like come in for a matinee, and you know, there was you know how there's like test laughs in the show? As actors, there's like, you can kind of, there are test lines in the show where you kind of know if the audience is a good audience or it's kind of like an audience. And, but you sort of always have like an ear to the monitor. And there was a line early on that Jim would sing, like a runaway streetcar, something like that. And if it had been like a particularly fun night before, it would be like, and you're like, oh, it's one of those shows. So anyway, I love Jim, he's like my big brother. But anyway, so I would know when it came time to do You're Nothing Without Me, and the two verses were slightly different. Damn David Zippel. And, so Jim would be like, he would be like, and I'd be like, I have to just watch Jim's lips. I have no idea, because we had to sing in unison. And it'd be like, I have to, what are you singing? Which verse are you singing? You're doing this one, yes. And it was a lot of fun to tell a story, but when you're like, I was so young, it was like
that SNL skit where they follow each other.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it's so true. So anyway, it was a lot of fun, but there were some times when it was the morning after we had a matinee. It was like, what are you doing? You're doing that. Okay, good.
So it's 1990, you're leaving your stage door. Was there anywhere that you went to hang out, like a watering hole, a restaurant with your castmates or otherwise that might even no longer be there? Like what were the hangs in 1990?
Gallagher's? Anyone go to Gallagher's?
I did.
No, everyone was a boxer at Gallagher's. It was like, yeah, my name's Jimmy. I used to be a boxer. Hey, over there, who's that? That's Jimmy. He used to be a boxer. It's hysterical. But you'd go in there and you'd pay for your first scotch. And like the next 4 were like free, so which is why Jim.
You were in City of Angels, of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Well, of course, I would just pick up the soup from the Edison Cafe.
Matzo
It
ball!
was so good.
Matzo ball!
Matzo ball, and they put dill in everything. Didn't matter what soup it was, there was dill in it. But I'm going back. I closed a show on New Year's Eve. Me and my girl closed on Broadway to make room for Annie 2.
Which the marquee went up on the marquee, but it never came in.
That's right.
I was there, I was not there.
All right, I mean, you know, and that year, I was in the show for about 6 months in New York, the last 6 months, and we were going to a place that doesn't exist anymore. It was called the Century.
Oh yeah.
It was on like 43rd.
There was a Century underneath the Paramount Hotel, like on 46 underneath that, but that might not be.
No.
Okay.
This was called the Century. It was called the Century. And they would give us half off. Yes, half off. And that included booze. So, you know, those old character guys and me and my girl, they'd go in and they'd get 3 martinis, you know. Anyway, it was fun. But it was great. It was great. I don't think it lasted much longer. I don't think it stayed around for changing the air. Maybe it did. I don't think so.
McHale's.
Oh,
McHale's on 46th and 8th, which is now.
It's a Pret.
Is it a Pret?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a building with a Pret in it. Yeah, it's a big old, you know. It was a stagehands, basically a stagehands hang, and stagehands and actors.
Great
it was
burgers.
Great burgers, great fries, and just, you know, the kind of place that just really doesn't exist anymore. There's no hang like that. That is, you know, old school, like a dive bar. Yeah, like a, you know, just that and Sam's. I heard you say Sam's.
There is, I have to say, there's a random bar, and I wish I could remember the name, right near Circle in the Square and the Gershwin, that has an old sign from McHale's in it, like a neon sign that they kept. Yeah. I wish I could remember the name, but if you're walking down that block, peer into the bar, see if you see a cool sign. That's my tip.
I mean, the stagehands would go, like, between cubes, would go to McHale's.
And they would actually have, was it like the assistant stage manager would call over to McHale's, and McHale's, they would pick up the phone and they go, hey, remember you got the queue coming up? They would call over to McHale's to make sure that the guys got back. Yeah. Because the show must go on in between drinks.
Tell us about Sam's, yeah.
Well, I think what I liked about Sam's was because I was finally on Broadway, and they treated you like you were somebody. And so that was what was so great about it. And Craig, who was the host, and I had met him when I was in college through a friend of mine in college. Her dad designed the chorus line, designed the sets. And so I got to know him through her, so I've sort of known quantity, but then I was finally on Broadway, so I thought, I gotta milk this for all it's worth. You know, I want to go to a place where they like pretend I'm somebody. So Sam's was great. And I ended up actually, found my apartment because the woman who worked the coat room at Sam's became a friend, and she's like, you know, there's somebody in my building, look at this other apartment. And I was like, so I'm still like go up 30 years later, thanks to Sam's.
And they had that big round table in the back.
That's right.
It was so great, and I always have heard that story. Should I tell that story?
Yeah, go ahead.
So it was like after a performance of Sugar Babies.
Oh.
That's way back. Yeah. And it was a bunch of the boys from the show, Doug Okerson and a bunch of them. And they're all sitting there, and Ann Miller joins them. And they're sitting there having a good time. And it comes time for, he comes around, the waiter comes around, lovely, good-looking African-American. And he says, can I get you all something, some dessert or something to drink? And Ann Miller says, I'd like a coffee. And he says, and how would you like that? And she says, I like my coffee like I like my men. And he looks at her and he says, I'm sorry, Miss Miller, we don't serve gay coffee.
Charlie's and Sam's and the theater bar at different places, and it was like legendary. It was the place that everyone would go to.
I think Charlie's became Sam's.
Yes, yeah. Like
Charlie's
it was
became Sam's.
generation names.
Yeah.
So many of you, I think probably all of you in these shows got to work with folks who sadly are no longer with us, and I know you talked about the great Cy Coleman. Is there any favorite story you have of someone you got to work with who is no longer with us?
You know, I shared, it's kind of what you were talking about before, I shared a dressing room with Renee Aubergine-Law, that just passed. And he had already done Benson, so he was kind of famous. Right? And so, or very famous, I guess. More famous than me. And so, he would always have all these famous people coming through. And I remember one time he said, so listen, tonight I'm going to have some friends coming, if it's okay. And I said, sure. He said, it's Bruce Paltrow, who was like this major TV person, right? And big TV producer in those days. And his wife is coming, who was like Danner. And so they come in, and there's this little sort of, blonde-haired girl following behind them. And I was like, hi, and I said, oh, boy, I'm such a fan. So, hi, Bruce, yes, of course, right. And this is our daughter, Gwyneth. And of course, it's like, well, hi, nice to meet you. And then, those years later, when all of a sudden somebody who you knew as a kid is like this major star, and you're like, is that the girl who came to my dressing room? It's really, yeah. But Rene was amazing. He was an amazing guy, so talented and so kind, and really just, he was a great photographer, a painter, as well as a great classical actor, as well as a TV actor. And it taught me a lot. It's one of those things. And it's funny too, I think, I don't know how you guys feel, but sometimes you don't know the value of the lessons you're learning until years later. And he's one of those people. Years later, I would be out in LA trying to get a TV job, and he would say, come on over, and he took me under his wing. And yeah, I mean, it's one of those, and that's one of those things that as we get older, as we all get older, can you hear me?
What?
But you begin to think, I'm not being altruistic by saying, I just try to pay it forward a little bit, because there's people who are younger than us who you just notice and you go, that looks like a lovely young person. And you say, you know what, I'm just gonna maybe do a little Rene Auberginois moment, And but it starts with the people who came before us, like your people you're saying, the people who had impact on us, who were stars maybe, but they had impact on us.
I had a slumber party with Christian Slater. He was 11. It's true. It's true. We were doing Oliver together. He was playing Oliver. And I was staying at a friend's house, and he went out of town, and he said, listen, if you want to have people over, so Christian and his caretaker, the guy, they came over and spent the night. So anyway, I always say, I had a slumber party. And he has not helped me one bit.
The ingratitude, really. Okay, so I was just thinking, aside from, I love many people, Michael Jeter, David Carroll, Rex Hayes, Kathy Moss, my dear Kathy Moss, who you almost took over for. Oh, God, I miss her. Anyway, but I just wanted to tell a quick story about Joe Silver. While I was still in Legs Diamond, Joe Silver, who had a voice like this, and was bald, and was just one of those old school guys. And he was playing Arnold Rothstein, and he had one club that was in the first scene of the first act, and another club that was in the last scene of the first act. And during previews, in the first scene, all of a sudden, in the middle of the scene, he's talking to Peter Allen, they're facing each other like this, and the set starts to pull, just disintegrate. Everything starts to fly out, and the audience laughs, everybody looks around, and they shrug, and they go on with the scene. Cut to the end of the first act, they're in a completely different club. The same thing happens. The set starts to fly out, and the audience is now really laughing, and Joe turns and looks around, and he goes, sees what's happening, and he turns back to Peter, he goes, I have the same problem in my other place.
Well, unfortunately, there are the people who have passed away from Cats are legion because of various and sundry things. The one person who came to mind immediately when you asked the question, Jennifer, was Laurie Beachman. Yeah. Laurie was my age, and she was just amazing. I enjoyed going on with every Grisabella I had, but Laurie was just so amazing. She had one of those voices that was so individual. She could sing 2 notes and you would automatically know it was her. And when I found out that she had been so ill and then she came back into the show, I thought, well, hopefully she has recovered, but unfortunately we lost her. And she's the one person I really think of when you ask such a question. Rest in peace, Laurie.
I think everyone thinks of her. If you go to the Laurie Beachman Theater on 42nd Street that has her name, I like to listen to her on my headphones when I walk in. It's just the best voice.
I feel like they are legion. I feel like with Chorus Line because they were my celebrities. All the original cast, those were the people that I needed to see. In fact, I would see that when I was in high school, when I finally started to dance, I pushed all my classes into the morning, and I came into the city in the afternoon, and I would take dance class, and I would standing room chorus line twice a week. So, and I'm getting away from the story, but, and I remember when I got the job, my dad said, thank God they're gonna finally pay you back for all those tickets you bought. And back to what you were saying about not realizing at the time. You know, I worshiped these people, but the lessons I learned, especially in the beginning, weren't necessarily the lessons what I take now. You know, I wanted to be one of them, like I wanted to be in with the in crowd, and so I kind of learned how to be like them. You know, and I kind of wasn't. And Chorus Line, there were lovely people, and we lost. I mean, the thing is that AIDS took kind of everybody. It became kind of commonplace to go to Equity and see the list. You know, there was always the obit list. And so there were so many. But I now feel fun. Like I worked with Ron Field, like the last thing he did. I got to do the things, I didn't really appreciate them then. And now as an old guy, I really do. So.
I'm sad to say that's about all the time we have for Broadway Time Machine, but please join me in thanking this incredible panel for their